Hi, my name is Corey Fosco, and I'm a writer from Chicago. 16 Ways to Be in Love is a new chapbook out from Alien Buddha Press. Chicago area writer Jeff Burd has compiled 16 flash and microfiction pieces that, as the editor at Alien Buddha says, explore the myriad forms love can take. Jeff, you're a graduate of the Northwestern University Writing Program and have a few dozen publication credits at places such as Flash Frog, Prairie Schooner, McQueen's Quinterly, and Men's Fiction. I know you're fond of remarking that you spend a lot of time writing and thinking about writing and worrying about not writing and thinking about writing. We've known each other for 20 years and have worked together throughout your writing career. You've asked me to talk with you today about 16 Ways, which is your first chapbook. So Jeff, first, I'd like to thank you for having faith in me to help introduce readers to your work. I remember the first time I read one of your pieces of fiction. It was probably around 2006 when we were peers at Northwestern. And the thing that stood out to me was how unique your voice was amongst all of our peers that were writing with us. And I've really come to appreciate your voice. And I was so excited that that voice is all over this chapbook. So I'd like to start by asking you about your writing process and how it's really contributed to your success as a writer.
Well, thanks for that nice introduction, Corey, and thanks for those kind words about your remembrance from that story. I know exactly what story you're talking about. So, um, in regard to my writing process, um, as you know, it's rewrite upon rewrite upon rewrite upon rewrite. Um, Even if I'm 98% of the way there, it's not close enough for me yet. So there's a lot of rewrite that goes on. Before that, though, I've been accused of having an absurd or ironic sense of humor, and I think when I'm comfortable, when I'm around people I know, and our thoughts are flowing and our voices are flowing, sometimes something comes up that just sticks with me, and think, wow, that could be a little kernel for a story right there. Years ago, I was walking into school one day, and an announcement came on that used a student's name, and within 2 steps, another student in the building had quipped a joke about her name. I heard it, I wrote it down. It became a full short story. It's not in 16 Ways, but it became a full short story. So start usually with something strange, ironic, absurd, not always, but usually, and then develop it and rewrite
Yeah.
until
Well,
it's gotta feel right.
and so along the same lines, this is a collection of fiction, and I'm curious if any of these are autobiographical in any way and how that influences your fiction.
Right. Um, Nothing in here is strictly autobiographical, thankfully, because there's some dark turns in here. Um, but something like Martha at the Ready, which is kind of in mid-range in the book,
Yeah.
that came from something that happened in college. There was a window that had the phone extension to the room taped to the glass, and my roommate called it one night, and there's a girl that wanted to meet some boys, and so I've always remembered that. 40 years later, I remember that, and made a good kernel for a story to start.
Yeah,
So
so I think that helps encourage, especially new writers, that you find that one little seed and it goes into a collection of stories, right? And so,
right.
um, by putting these together as a collection, how do you think that enhances the reader's experience of learning and hearing Jeff Bird's voice?
Um, I think this helps the reader develop a through line to all this. Um, that's there are certainly some absurd, dark, and ironic, and even pathetic ways in which we conduct ourselves in relationships. And when you see not just one of those threads, but you see that kind of all into a ball of yarn, kind of makes for a more consolidated experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I know your writing process. It's very extensive. You go through many, many versions when you're editing and rewriting, because as we know, writing is rewriting, right? And
right.
so help us understand a little bit about the process of transformation that any of these stories have had going through the process of writing them.
Okay. Well, I you know what I'll point to. Monster Baby and Meat Counter Girl as one
Okay.
that went through
Yeah.
tremendous transformation, because it started as two different stories that happened to have a butcher counter in common at a grocery store.
Yeah.
And the first one that we looked at in writers group a couple of years ago was pretty dark. I was in another workshop. Sorry, I'm cheating on our workshop with another workshop. I was in another workshop last summer, and I thought I'd found a way to bridge these stories. And so two flash pieces I divide into three micro pieces with a unifying theme, and that came at the suggestion of one of my classmates. Um, and when I thought about that, I was like, wow, yeah, that totally works. So, and one of the great things about that, though, also about that is that it varies the plots we find in these stories. Now that becomes like an episodic flash piece,
Hmm.
rather than like a standalone flash piece like Reception or Zadie, where they're red hot moments in people's lives. This becomes episodic over three distinct moments, at least one kind of red hot.
Hmm.
So um, the evolution of that story, really pleased that it came through like that. So
Nice. And how about writers that influence you, or authors that influence this particular chapbook? Are there any intentional nods or allusions that you have within your work that you'd like the readers to know about?
right. Um, well, as you well know, uh, Raymond Carver, of course, a huge influence
Yeah.
on both you and me. And if anyone would ever say I see some Carver in there, well, I think I would have done my job.
Yeah.
Um, but some I think if we look down at the Escape Hammer, which was a hard story for me to get a grasp on. In that workshop last summer, I my outside reading I chose was a book by Tommy Dean called Shallows,
Hmm.
um, and I started to pay attention to his style. And he was using what I came to refer to as first-person direct address, where there's a first person narrating the story, but the
Hmm.
story is directed specifically to one person. So, and that then the reader becomes that person. So it just adds some more powerful effects. So I got to give a nod to Tommy Dean there. Hopefully, I'd love to meet him someday and just shake his hand and say, "Hey, thanks, man. You helped me make a big breakthrough there." Um, but I think the sparseness of prose, the brevity, the troubled characters that populate these stories, those things come directly from Carver.
Yeah, and again, I know your writing process, and you take a lot of patience and time in making sure the work is ready for others to read, right? And but again, I want to maybe speak, and I'm going to hold up the book there. Um, what about any specific challenges or breakthroughs, or yes moments that you found in writing these pieces, right? That when you knew they were ready to be sent out, or you knew they were ready to put together. Tell us a little bit about maybe that process that you go through on knowing when something is ready to go out into the public, or even the process, the challenges you have getting it there.
Right. Um, well, I had tried a couple chapbooks in the past couple of years that used more of my flash writing, but I wasn't having any success with them.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't until I took that workshop through Cleaver last summer, where I was getting direct exposure to chapbooks and novellas in Flash, where I started to think, well, wait a second, maybe I've got a unifying theme
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it was like, ding, ding, ding. Yeah, I do have one. I was using too many stories that were some of them were too tangential to a central idea. But when I settled on, wow, these strange takes on our romantic relationships, and I thought, wow, because I write about that a lot. It's like I
Yeah,
write
for
about that a
sure.
whole lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So that brought this together, and then just trying to find an order to put them in, kind of a logical order to put them in. Um, that was a bit of a challenge. I got some very great very good encouragement from my classmates. Saw some good examples. I think a good breakthrough moment for a writer too is when they see something that's been published and say, hey, you know what? That's kind of like what I write.
Yeah.
So wow, I must be, going down the right path. I must be within reach of something. And so I did see that in some of the materials we read.
So I have a couple more questions for you, and then I would love for you to read. And you referenced the escape hammer. I actually think I'm going to ask you to read that one and I'll give you a reason why in a minute. But
I'd
what
love to.
about advice for aspiring authors? And what do you feel is the most rewarding part of seeing your work, put together in a chapbook like this?
Um, I guess my advice would be it comes straight from Jack Riddle, the Michigan poet who I had the great fortune to meet. And he says, you got to love to practice. You have to love to practice. He was a college basketball player, and he loved to be out in the driveway shooting jumpers. He loved to be at the gym. He loved to correct his mistakes. And that carried over to his writing. And I've always remembered that, is you have to love to practice. And I think you've got to understand that it's all practice.
Yeah.
Even though I've got a published chapbook now, that's practice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and I think what you said early on about the voice, even when my wife reads something new from me, she comments on that too. It just feels real. It feels like these are real people talking. And while the situations are kind of absurd or ironic or strange, it's still got a real realness to it.
Yeah, and so I think to paraphrase a little bit of what I heard you say also is find your trusted readers, right? And
Yeah.
people that can help you develop you as a writer, and not
Mhm.
just say, this is great, right? You're actually going to give you some
Yeah.
feedback and that genuine feedback, right?
I have that. I've got our
Yeah.
writers group.
Yeah.
My trusted readers. You've been one for quite a while.
Yeah.
My wife is brilliant in this sense. She's not got a literary background. She's not a writer.
Yeah.
She reads everything on the surface, and that's my first reader right there. Surface readers get this on the first go, but then there's a lot of depth the more you reread. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what's next for you in your writing career now that you've got a great chapbook behind you? What's next for you?
Well, I'm working on a series of connected flash pieces, starting to slowly develop over a couple of years. But the big thing though is I'm working on a teaching memoir, a post-COVID teaching memoir. Some experiences were very impactful to me and shaped how my career has been running and shaped my understanding of myself. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Well,
pretty excited about that.
I would love to hear you read one of your short pieces here called "The Escape Hammer," and really, and I've read many versions of that, and I'm excited that it's in this collection. And it's the ironic symbolism that is all over this piece that I think readers will really enjoy. So please let's hear your voice.
Got it. Thank you. This is on page 52. The Escape Hammer. I'm sitting at the kitchen table in my flannel nightgown and wool socks, a hot cup of coffee in my hands, when you come in from the garage dressed for the hunt in your camouflage coat and pants. You're puffing your chest the way you do when you remember flowers for my birthday or are sure you got me the perfect Christmas gift. You have a FedEx overnight box in your hands that you slice open with your buck knife. You pull out a hand-sized orange object shaped like the letter T. You cut it out of the plastic shell, slide it across the table to me, and check the expression on my face. I glance at the packaging and see the device is called the Escape Hammer. The escape part keeps my attention, printed there in large white font on orange cardboard. Is this finally my way out of this cycle of bruises and apologies? All this time did I just need the right tool? If only it was so laughably easy. A wry smile creeps across my lips. For car emergencies, you say? I nod. You point to the handle and say there's a blade notched in there. It'll cut through an unretractable seatbelt. You keep checking my face, but only see the slight curls at the corners of my mouth. You say a stuck seatbelt, like if it's jammed. You say something about escaping from a car, but your voice trails off. Then you say something about how the pointed tips on the hammer part will smash right through glass. I look at the china cabinet and imagine jagged chunks of glass stuck in the door frames. Generations of porcelain and glistening shards on the floor. You say it's easy to use, even with my twiggy wrists and tiny hands. You say it like an accusation, like my petite frame is my fault. You don't mind it so much when your huge gut pins me to the mattress. I pick up the hammer and tell you thanks. I drop my hand to my side and feel the weight of the device sway my arm like a pendulum. I look at your pale, bald skull. Where am I supposed to aim? How hard do I have to swing it? You say keep it in the glove box because shit happens this time of year. Jackasses end up as human popsicles in a lake or a river if they drive their cars off icy bridges. There's a thought. Just let go of the steering wheel. Foot off the brakes. My car finds its way through the guardrail and splashes down. Slips below the surface. Freezing water trickles in as the car settles to the bottom. Numbness creeps upward. Feet, legs, stomach, chest. You say something about watching out for my safety, but your voice trails off again.
16 Ways to Be in Love by Jeff Burd, by Alien Buddha Press, published by Alien Buddha Press. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
And
Corey.
congratulations.
Thank you.